Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I introduced this bill last year at the request of an organization called Fuerza Laboral. It means labor force in Spanish, and that organization is comprised of many immigrant workers, some undocumented, some documented, primarily in the Central Falls, Pawtucket area, as well as throughout the state. This bill, which passed this committee and the full Senate last year, calls for enhanced penalties for wage theft. So if you can see, the primary changes are on page 2 at the bottom. And it simply says that any employer who's found guilty of a violation and does not pay the wages that they owe and pay the fines within 30 days after notification by DLT, they may have their business license revoked by the state of Rhode Island until they pay the wages and the fines in full. Additionally, there is another penalty provision that if the business that fails to pay the wages, and of course these are not allegations, these are after a hearing by DLT, and I know Director Jensen is here, after the department finds that that in fact has happened, if the offending business was unlicensed, then there would be enhanced penalties. I believe the AG has spoken to me about that. They may want one small change. I think they are in favor of the enhanced penalty, but would like it worded differently regarding the larceny. And then lastly, it would also, if the person does engage in wage theft, sometimes, as I was discussing with the director, it's very hard to get some of those businesses to actually pay the fines. And so this bill would create a cause of action or an ability to go to court for the wage theft, so that in actual court, something stronger than the Department of Labor would actually enjoin or order a business to pay the wages that the department found were due and owing. So it's a very pro-worker bill, and obviously somebody who actually works for another human or a corporation or an entity, certainly if it's found by the Department of Labor that it was the type of interaction that requires that that person be paid, other than slavery, I don't know what else is fundamental other than paying people for the work that they do. So again, I think it's a good bill on behalf of laborers and workers that did pass the committee and the Senate last year, and I certainly hope for the committee's support again this year.
Any questions?
First, Senator, I want to compliment you on this bill. I look forward to supporting this again in this committee and out on the floor. I think it's very imperative that we take care of our employees and make sure that they are protected and we're not being robbed by employers.
Thank you, Senator. I know how good you are to your employees, and you want everyone to treat them as well. I knew I lost Senator Chacon at that point.
Senator Chacon.
Just a question, Senator. I didn't hear in the bill that what happens if the company closes?
It would be an enforcement provision with DLT. I think it's very difficult if the company actually closes to get money out of an entity that doesn't exist. So both from a practical point of view, I don't think that the wage earner would have a very likely chance of getting their money. And I think it's very difficult, as an attorney to sue a defunct entity. So unfortunately, those folks, are probably out of luck. I don't see much recourse, practically speaking.
Any other questions for Senator Messenbush? Thank you, Senator. The Director of DLP.
Thank you. Since I was here, I thought I would talk because you get to see Matt all the time, and I'm not here much. So I would just like to lend our support to Senator Messenbush's bill, and just to explain why some of the provisions are important real quick. Most of the companies in Rhode Island are playing by the rules, and when you get some just don't, and we need every sort of trick in the book to try to get folks to pay wages that they owe. You mentioned, Senator, about chasing after companies that go out of business. That's a big problem, and it's a real problem when that small group of employers who are purposely cheating not, to get a competitive advantage. It's not fair. So we're definitely in support of this bill and here to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Director. Any questions?
Thanks.
Speaking in favor, no one signed up against this bill.
Mi nombre es Jacobo Argueta.
My name is Jacobo Argueta.
Yo estoy dando mi testimonio que si pueden pasar esta ley.
I'm giving testimony in favor of this bill.
Yo trabajé para una compañía por 12 años de landscaping.
I worked for a landscaping company for 12 years.
Trabajaba los 7 días de la semana. Trabajaba 70, 80 horas a la semana.
I would work 7 days a week for 12 years, 70 to 80-hour weeks.
Cuando empecé a trabajar manejando un camión me pagaban $7 la hora.
When I started with that company, I was driving the truck and I was paid $7 an hour.
Trabajaba los domingos, excepto cuando estaba lloviendo muy fuerte.
I would work every Sunday, except when it was raining very hard.
Nunca me pagaron overtime por 12 años.
For those entire 12 years, I was never paid overtime.
Después, cuando quise poner mi propia compañía, me amenazaron que me iban a llamar migración, que mi compañía, mi ex-boss me andaba siguiendo, que no tenía seguro.
When I told my employer that I was going to start my own company so that I could set my own conditions, my employer threatened me with calling immigration, would call up my clients and say that I didn't have the proper insurance.
Yo tenía mi seguro, tenía registrada mi compañía.
I had my insurance, I had my company registered, I had everything in order.
Que después yo me hice miembro de Fuerza Laboral. Es una institución donde nosotros recibimos 5 o 10 casos al mes.
That I became a member of Fuerza Laboral, which Senator Nesselbush introduced to you guys. At Fuerza, we see anywhere between 5 and 10 wage theft cases every month, and some of those cases involve more than 10 employees.
Después de todo eso, metí una aplicación para ver si podía recuperar el overtime.
That I submitted a wage theft complaint for non-payment of overtime with the Department of Labor back in June and July.
No he recibido ni me han llamado, no he recibido ninguna carta ni nada cuando me van a reunirme con mi ex-boss o algo por el estilo.
That nothing has happened with my case. I haven't gotten any communication, haven't had a hearing yet.
Lo que a mí me está pasando le ha pasado a mucha gente.
And what's happened to me is happening to lots of workers across the state.
Yo quisiera que pasaran esta ley. Es muy común en lo que es landscaping, construcción, todo eso.
That wage theft is very common in landscaping, construction, among other industries. And that's why we want to pass this law. My name is Phoebe Gardner. I work with Fuerza Laboral. And I would also say that, there's a lot of cases of wage theft, non-payment of overtime, non-payment of wages to begin with, non-payment of minimum wage. Jacobo followed the steps that he needs to take. We still haven't gotten any results from that case, even though he submitted it back in June and July. And even with a lot of cases that do get a positive decision from a DLT hearing, the problem is actually being able to collect on employers. And the type of penalties and sanctions that we would get with Senator Nesselbush's bill would make it even more, would give even a stronger incentive to employers to not commit wage theft because their license would get revoked and because of all the other penalties, which would be a much stronger motivation for employers than what we have now and give us much better tools to actually be able to recover that money once the wage theft complaint has gone through the DLT process.
Well, thank you for coming down and testifying.